This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be in the Valley of Life. But unfortunately that valley has been cursed and is decaying. Now we're going to play druidic clans that are trying to cleanse the valley. Today we are looking at Mystic Vale. This is a new style of game called a card crafting game for 2 to 4 players from AEG. It's somewhat similar to a deck builder, but it has some very interesting different twists where you're going to be creating your cards yourself. And every game is quite different. So let me show you how it's played. I'll see you on the other side. Mystic Vale is for 2 to 4 players, and in this game, each player is going to get 20 cards of the color of their choice. Now you can notice these cards are sleeved. This game actually comes with card crafting sleeves from AEG that you'll actually sleeve these starter cards, and there's actually 20 extra in case these get messed up or torn during play. You'll pick your color, and you'll get your 20 cards. Now I'm set up to play my first round. This is known as your field, and this is where you'll be harvesting out different abilities, different cards. This is known as your deck because that's actually my draw deck. This is face up on top of my deck, and essentially you're starting so that there's 3 of these what's called decay symbols, 2 in my field and 1 here, and then I'm ready to play. Now as you notice, some of these cards are blank because we're going to be adding stuff to them as the game goes on. Let's take a closer look at these cards. So here we see you start with 3 cursed lands started out here, and then you'll see these little symbols here. These are mana symbols. Now the decay themselves, we're known as having 3 decay right now. 1, 2, 3. But the mana that you actually get to spend, think of this as currency in the game, you only count your field. So field you count here, decay you count including your deck. Now here I just have 2 mana that I can spend. So on my turn I have 2 choices. I can either not press my luck and just take and activate anything that's in my field here. A lot of these cards will start to have special abilities and such that I can do afterwards. But right now at the beginning of the game I just have basically mana to spend. So I have 2 mana to spend, but if I want to try to press my luck, I could try to get this card in my field, which would add. So then I would have 3. So if I wanted to, I could add this all the way on the right of my field and then flip this. But if this, when I flip it, has another decay on it, which would mean I would have 4. This would be in my field. 2, 3. If I flip this up on itself and it has this, like that, I would have just busted. And basically it's called spoils. And if you spoils, essentially your turn's pretty much over. You would take all your cards here and put them in a discard pile, and your turn would pretty much be over. Now I have these 2 mana. Now you also have a token which actually counts as a 3rd mana. So right now I could use 3, but if I use this, then it gets flipped over and I cannot use it again. How we get this flipped over again is I just talked about how if we had gotten 4 decay symbols, we would have spoiled and we would have discarded and lost our turn. In that case, when you do spoil, as a consolation, you get to flip this over to use this again. So I have 3 if I really want to use it, or I have 2 normally. What can you do with this currency called mana? Well, here we see 3 levels of what's called advancement cards. They're split up into different levels on purpose, level 1, 2, and 3, and they're denoted that on the card. There's 3 of each that you could buy at once, and this is sort of the draw deck for those. So let's say I wanted to buy one of these. Remember, I had 2 mana. This shows you the cost. So all of these right now cost 2. Actually, this one costs 3. Now you look and see what they do. Now these are sort of plastic cards, and how this works is once you buy these at the end of the round, these cards are going to go in the sleeves and make this card more than one thing. Now I couldn't buy this one and put it in here because this would cover up this one here. But one of the other cards in my field was like this, and essentially I could buy this and this would go in the sleeve, and now I have a whole card that is like that. So you're going to try to figure out which card to put into one of the ones that's in your field that you have room for. Again, this is the cost. These are sort of a spirit type of logos that you can use to buy other cards later that I'm going to show you, some Vale cards. This one would just give me an additional mana every time this card comes out. Some of them have special abilities and things that get activated, like for example, this one says, hey, when played. So when you bring this thing out to your field, you may discard any other card in your field. Maybe this one comes out and you're discarding one that has maybe a ton of those decay symbols on them, for example. So if I want to buy one, let's just say, and this has a helmet, and there's some cards that give you points for however many helmets you have sort of at the end of the game. These ones show you how many points you'll get at the end of the game for this card. Anytime you see a gray point, that does that. So let's say I bought this one. And let's say that was the only thing I was going to do during my harvest phase. This is known as the harvest phase. Remember, we only got here because we did not push our luck. If we had pushed our luck and we had a discard, we would have skipped this phase all entirely. So let's say we bought this thing. I would just slide this right here in my sleeve. So now I have a card that's starting to be crafted. Oh, and look at this. So now I have that spirit and this and this. And so I would take all this I would have already been done with my turn. I'm in the discard phase and I'm putting this in here. And all these cards would then just get discarded. And by the way, you can look through your discard pile at any time. Now, it would really be the next player's turn at this point. But the cool thing is as the next player is starting to take their next turn, I can do like the prep phase of my turn. It's sort of the end of my turn, which is, here's the card that was on my deck. I would put it here, I would flip this up, and then I would kind of put it out here. Now remember, we're gonna stop as soon as we have a total of 3 decays, including on my deck. That's a blank card. So this one would go here, we'd flip this up. That's another blank card. Now at the beginning of the game, there's a lot of blank cards, but those will fill up as the game goes on. These will end up having a lot of things in them and they'll be useful. So right now I've started my prep phase and now I have 1, 2, 3, and I would stop here. Now some of the cards, when you put these out here, will activate abilities, and you do that during this prep phase. But now I'm sort of prepping for my turn, and someone else is probably already starting to take their turn almost in a simultaneous manner. And at this point, you know, when it comes back to my turn, I will pretty much be able to just go and either say I'm either going to press my luck or I'm going to stop and go right to my harvest phase. And after my turn was over, that is when these things would get replaced. They don't get replaced right when you buy them, and then it would be the next player's turn. Now let's say on your turn when you're getting ready to sort of press your luck or whatever, and you continue to press your luck and you're able to keep placing these, as soon as this is done, you're going to take your discard pile, shuffle it, place it here, and just continue just like a normal deck builder would. Now as I mentioned, as you're putting your cards in your field, some of them activate right away. Like when you play this one, look at this is a card that has been crafted with all 3. Once this turn, if you were to spoil, you can basically discard the one on top of your deck instead. So that's basically allows you to press your luck a little bit further. Or for example, if this was in one of my cards, essentially you could, you know, right when you play it into your harvest, into your fields, you search your deck for any card, you may pull it into your discard pile, then shuffle your deck. That's to avoid something bad from happening that you don't want to happen. And if this one was in your card, you know, during the harvest phase, meaning I didn't push my luck and I'm able to get past it, I get 1 point for each of these helmets on this card. So this card, whatever card this went in sleeves, you'd want to get a bunch of these. Now these are points that you'll get for things like that, and there's a certain limited amount of these depending on the amount of players that's in the game. Now if you've been able to make it past that planting phase and didn't press your luck too hard, you got to the harvest phase, part of the things you can do is you can try to get some of these Vale cards. There's 2 different levels, those level 1s and level 2s, so let's take a little bit closer look at some of these. So on my turn, if this was in my fields, for example, I have 2 symbols here of the 2 different spirit symbols, and those 2 are on this card. So even with this card, I could basically, I'd be able to use these symbols to get this card, because that's what's there, the Blooming Arbor. And then it says if I would put this in front of me, and then later on, if I were to spoil, I can discard this card to gain one of these little symbols right here. And those growth symbols, here's a player aid that you get as well. Basically, one of these growth symbols cancels out a decay. So if you're about to spoil, you could basically discard this card and say, nope, I have one of these, which cancels out one of my decays. I can press my luck a little bit further. Also, some of the other cards, the advancement cards, for example, like this one, has it in there. So anytime this card comes up, essentially it's canceling out a decay, which is really cool. It allows you to get bigger hands and get bigger points and things like that. This guy here, you can tell he's a level 2 card. He's expensive, he costs 6, but he'll get you a point at the end. He cancels out decays, and he has that animal spirit token on him. And these do all sorts of things, like this one during the harvest phase. Again, if you got past your press your luck stage there, this thing just gives you 1 mana every round. This would get you 2 points at the end of the game, 6 points at the end of the game, 3 points at the end of the game. This one allows you to gain 1 permanent growth, which always kind of, like we just mentioned, gets rid of a decay. This gains you 1 of these spirit symbols, which essentially can be used as a wild. So during the harvest, essentially you have 1 wild symbol to go try to get more of these cards, sort of an engine building way. Now in addition to buying the other advancements we talked about, there's a stack of fertile soil cards. They're limited, but there's a pretty big stack of these. And essentially, this is sort of like Money in Dominion would be, where you can spend 2 mana to get this, and it's always going to give you a mana. And when you buy one of these, you can pick which one you want. So you can say whether you want it on the top, the middle, or the bottom. Think of it as sort of just a way to buy more currency in the game. Now here's some of the level 3 cards. This one's really awesome. It's worth 7. You'll get 2 points in the game. It has the helmet. We saw how some cards interact to give you points for helmets on cards. Every time this card comes out into your field, you're going to get 4 points immediately. You'll take these here, and you'll put them right into your supply, but he has a decay. This guy here has a helmet, 2 points at the end. He's 9, but he gives you a mana and 3 different spirit symbols, so he's really good about getting you some of those Vale cards. Now this one costs 9, gets you 2 points at the end of the game, but it also gets you a certain amount of points depending on if you have any of these symbols on this card as well. You get 1 point for those at the end of the game. Now you'll notice that some of these have abilities like this, and for example, if I had this card in my sleeve, and then I went to go put this one, whatever side the ability is on the side is the one. So this one actually would cover up what this ability did, but you could put these in the same sleeve if you want. It wouldn't be ideal because you'd be losing this little ability here. Now this one here, during the harvest, which again is past your push your luck phase, you get 1 mana for each other card in your field. So you want this to be out there when you have a ton of cards out there. 2 points into the game, 2 points as soon as this comes out into your field. And then you have things like this, it has a spirit, and then during the harvest you gain 1 point for every 2 cards in your field. Another one about getting a lot of cards out. So those are some of the different things that some of the cards do, but there's plenty of these. So that's pretty much how the game works. You're going to be going through your deck, you're going to be activating cards, trying to buy more advancements, to buy Vale cards, to get points. And as soon as this is gone, everyone will have the same amount of turns, and then at the end of that, you score up all your card end points and such like that, and add them to the points that you've got, and the one who has the most is the winner. And by the way, it has a nice insert here. Here's where the card sleeves go. This is where you typically put the mana and the tokens. I like to just bag stuff up. I have all the player cards here, 2 sets of cards here, the other 2 player sets of cards here, and I have the first level with the fertile soil, level 2, level 3 advancements, and all the Vale cards. They all fit really nicely. Great job on the insert. Alright, well there's Mystic Vale. Now, if you're not familiar with my likes and dislikes, coming at this game from my perspective, I know this is, people frown upon this, but I typically don't like deck builders, and I am not very enthralled with fantasy themes. So just looking at this from the outside in, you might think, well, this is the perspective I'm coming as. I typically don't like something like this. Now, with that being said, that's the lens I'm shooting this through. In fact, the only deck builder that I even own, and I love it by the way, is Baseball Highlights 2045. But besides that outlier, I have not really liked or kept any deck builder. I just don't like that style of play for some reason. Now this is quite interesting because this is sort of a new genre game. Every once in a while, a new genre game will come out like, hey, deck builders did back in the day. It was like, whoa, this is a new style of game. And this is sort of a new style of game, I think. This card crafting system, it sort of reminded me of a couple years ago, a game came out called Rattlebones from Rio Grande, and that was one where you actually craft dice, and you can actually take things off the dice and put them on, and how you roll those dice, different things activate. And I thought that was the coolest thing, but since then, no one's actually sort of taking that mechanic and put it into sort of a bigger game or a more serious game or maybe a non-family friendly game to use it. And I would like to see that. But now we have this, a card crafting system, which I thought was really cool. Now, a lot of people have been online going, it just looks like a gimmick. Now, I gotta say, a few months ago, I saw Todd Rowland from AEG do a periscope of this and how it worked. And I thought, wow, that is really cool. And I still do think it's really cool. I like the aspect of hey, I've got these cards. Some of them are blank at the beginning, some of them are not. And I get to decide, how am I going to craft my cards? I'm going to be buying this and sticking in this sleeve. And there's not just the decisions of, hey, which cards do I buy? But it's like, once I buy those advancements, which card am I going to put them in? Do I want to put it in this blank card and just keep it sort of a safe little card so that I have more things to do more often? Or do I want to start really building up one huge card first and knowing that, hey, when that card comes out, I'm going to have a big turn, but I'm a little bit thin in the other directions. It's a really cool idea, especially since some of them interact with each other quite a bit, where you saw that some of those helmets will give you points for how many different spirit symbols you have on there and different things like that. So they sort of interact with each other, and I think that's cool. It is sort of that, I guess they call it, it's a card crafting game, but it does feel similar to many deck builders, right? You're using mana as sort of money or currency. You're trying to build that engine up to use that currency to buy cards, to then do cool things, activate abilities, get end game points, and then buy those Vale cards, which do sort of different things as well. Some end game points, some different things. So it's like I'm getting money to build this, to build this. So in that sense, it does feel like a normal deck builder to me. And, when people say this is a gimmick, I looked up gimmick in a dictionary. Basically, it says, it's a sort of a new thing that is used, or a new device or product that's used to just gain interest or fanfare from people. And I don't think that's what this is. I think that this is a real game. It's not just, oh, that's cool, it's a new gimmick. I don't think so. And the reason why I think that is because, A, it's not just cool and feel like a different of a deck builder. But the thing that really makes it feel different is that push your luck element. You know, you mix that thing where you're getting your prep phase and you've got those 3 decay symbols and you're like, okay, what am I gonna do? Man, I've got almost enough to get what I need. I'm gonna go for it. And if you spoil, you spoil, and you kind of lost your turn. But I like that aspect of it, especially because you can look through your discard pile and you can be like, okay, I haven't gotten that card yet that I really need. I'm gonna go for it. And that simple, it might seem simple. It might seem like, oh, it's not that much, just press your luck with deck builder. Not really, because it doesn't feel like that. I think that small change really makes this feel different from a normal deck builder in that realm. And I like press your luck, so I do like that. So overall, what do I think? Well, I think the artwork's awesome. I think the mechanics are great. Again, I'm not totally into this type of art, into this type of theme at all. I'm not into deck builders, but I did enjoy this one, I would say, more than pretty much any other standardized or normal deck builder that I've played up until this point, other than, say, Baseball Highlights 2025, which is kind of a different one. So yes, I like it, and coming from this perspective says a lot. And I can say, you know, I did play this with people that do love Dominion and things like that, and they also said, wow, this really separates itself because of that sort of, not only just the card crafting, which obviously is what separates it, but that press your luck separates it even further than we thought it would. So if you're into deck builders and you like Dominion, all these Ascension and things like that, and you like fantasy themes, putting this new card crafting system and that press your luck, I think this is going to do really well out in the industry. For me, I liked it. I liked it more than most deck builders that I've ever played, but it's still not one that I'm like, oh, I love it. It's just, I'm just predetermined not to like these style of games, but I did enjoy it, and I would play it with you if you asked me to, which in my perspective is saying a lot given my biases towards this type of theme and this type of mechanics. So I give it a thumbs up. I think you should really check it out. Don't just dismiss it as it's a gimmick. It's a really cool idea. It works well. It gives you a lot of interesting choices. And I think people that like these themes and this style of games are really going to love it. And that is Mystic Vale.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for backing me on Kickstarter and making this season become a reality. I'd like to especially thank those here that have backed me at the credit level. Now, these video reviews are also available by audio on our podcast. It's the intros and the final thoughts on GameBoyGeek.com. Click podcast.